do have some breaking news to tell you about right now. A decision has been delayed in the sentencing and whether or not Trump's hush money conviction is going to be thrown out. Let me get straight out to CNN's Paula Reed. Paula, what can you tell us?
Well, Jim, we'll be waiting another week at least for this answer from Judge Juan Merchan, who oversaw Trump's criminal trial earlier this year, where he was, of course, convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. The judge had given himself until today to decide whether the Supreme Court's decision earlier this year granting Trump immunity for actions he took in office, whether that applied to this conviction, because there were pieces of evidence that could be construed as official acts, including conversations that he had with some of his staffers that were introduced as evidence. So the judge said, look, I'm giving myself until today to decide whether the Supreme Court's decision means that this conviction should be tossed. But while we were waiting for that decision, we learned that, in fact, they are giving it another week before the judge decides on this issue. Now, sources tell me that prosecutors and defense attorneys have been discussing this over the past few days, and they mutually agreed to delay this deadline so that Trump's lawyers will have additional time to make new arguments based on the fact that their client is now the president-elect. Sources tell me that they will argue that as president-elect, Trump is entitled to constitutional protection from state actors. So that would include state judges, a sentencing in this case. They have tried successfully twice now to get this sentencing delayed, but here they want it completely canceled based on his status as president-elect, and prosecutors agreed to give them time to make those arguments. Now, prosecutors will also have a response to that. So based on these documents that we have obtained, the conversations went back and forth for several days, and they agreed, and the judge granted this request. So it will be at least another week until we get a decision from Judge Juan Merchan about whether he may toss this conviction based on the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, or potentially just nix the sentencing altogether because Trump is now the president-elect. So again, all eyes are on Judge Juan Merchan a week from now to determine if President-elect Trump will be sentenced on this conviction.
Yeah, and Paula, there's a lot riding on all of this, correct? Because, I mean, what Judge Merchan could ultimately do is essentially not have a sentencing at all, not have a conviction at all. He may end up not being a convicted felon based on what Judge Merchan does.
Yeah, there are a lot of options here, Jim. The one the Trump team would like to see, of course, is the conviction tossed out, because then there's no question about a sentencing. But that was always considered a long shot bid, because prosecutors have argued that the evidence that could be construed as official acts, so for example, conversations with Hope Hicks, because while most of the conduct in the hush money case occurred before Trump entered the White House, some of it did take place while he was president. But prosecutors have said, look, the amount of evidence that could be construed as official acts, it is minimal, that the evidence here in this case was overwhelming, and this conviction should stand. Trump's lawyers always understood that it was a long shot to try to have the Supreme Court immunity decision used to toss this conviction. But now they have new arguments that they think are even stronger. They will argue that as president-elect, he cannot be sentenced. So they're not looking to delay the sentencing. They are looking to have it canceled. So now Judge Juan Merchan, he will have to evaluate all of these different arguments and decide how he wants to proceed. But I will note, Jim, we've been covering President-elect Trump's legal issues over the past several years. He faced 4 criminal cases, and so far his lawyers have been successful in keeping their client out of jail, and they may be successful in preventing him from even being sentenced after this conviction.
Yeah, that is a fascinating thing to note, no question about it, Paula. And let me bring in Kara Scannell. She's also been watching this case very closely. What are your thoughts on this, Kara? I mean, I guess we're going to have to wait one more week. That's ultimately what we're talking about right now. But I mean, this is a big decision for Judge Merchan, and I suppose that's perhaps why he wants some more time.
Yeah, it is a big decision. It's also going to be very critical to see what position the district attorney's office takes. As Trump's team has alluded to, they're going to make arguments that the state judge should not have anything to do with a president-elect. And the deadline here is really something to watch, because we've now pushed this out one more week, but that gets us one more week to Inauguration Day. So the calendar is shrinking as far as what kinds of decisions can be made here. The state is, possible that they will agree that the former president cannot be sentenced in this case until he's out of office. It's possible they may take another position that the judge should still move forward with this ruling on immunity, and that the president-elect can continue to appeal that while he's in office, because an appeal is largely work that's left to the attorneys. It doesn't take too much of the president's attention. But this is certainly a big decision for this judge. You can see they're being very methodical in how they're doing this. He's giving them just 1 week to come back and reassess and tell him what they want them to do. The judge is behaving in the way that he is not being an activist here. He's letting the parties tell them what that they think he should do in this case, what they want to agree to in this case. Certainly a big decision here, and a big question again for the DA's office of, are they willing to be satisfied with a conviction looming in the air, that's taking that as a win as it stands right now, and not having the judge rule on whether this case stands as it is, or if he does set aside the conviction in light of the Supreme Court's decision, or will they try to move forward? Given the tight timetable here, though, it seems very unlikely that the president-elect will be sentenced before he gets into the White House. But the judge here asking both sides for guidance on how they want to move forward with this in light of the election results and the timetable that we have here after Trump's team has successfully pushed off this sentencing twice, and now this being the third time, Jim.
Right. I mean, the strategy all along for Donald Trump was delay, 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 announce that he's running for president earlier than just about anybody ever has, because he wants to, put that out there that he's running for president and create this atmosphere where every one of these cases is an act of, as he called it, political persecution. And Paula Reed, I do want to ask you this question, and that is, why does the Supreme Court's immunity decision have anything to do with this if this is a state case?
Sure. Well, his lawyers have argued that some of the evidence that was introduced during this trial would constitute an official act, specifically conversations that he had with some of his staffers, specifically Hope Hicks. So they argue that that evidence should not have come in at trial and the whole conviction should be tossed. But prosecutors say, look, that was a very tiny part of the case. The case did not rest on the testimony of Hope Hicks or other junior staffers, so this conviction should hold. And sources familiar with the Trump legal strategy tell me they always knew that this was a long shot, but it is a fair argument to make, Jim. It's a Supreme Court case. It doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to state cases, especially when we're talking about the executive branch. But last week, we broke the story that the Trump team was going to try a completely new avenue in the Manhattan criminal case to try to get this sentencing not just delayed, but canceled, that they would make these new constitutional arguments, and that's exactly what we're seeing happening here. They had conversations with prosecutors over the weekend, and they mutually agreed to give the Trump team and the prosecutors a little bit of additional time to address this new issue of the fact that the conviction applies to someone who is now the president-elect, and there may be legal considerations that mean he cannot be sentenced.
All right, Paula Reed, Kara Scannell, thank you both very much.